Welcome to the Spirit Experience podcast, where we discuss spiritual practices for healing and happiness. Join us each Monday for enlightening conversations with spiritual teachers across a variety of practices and modalities. On this week's episode of the Spirit Experience podcast, I welcome Shanel Scott-Ziegler. Shanel considers herself a spiritual tour guide with a sacred reverence for healing, which she brings out in her work through the modalities of psychic mediumship, medical intuitive, Reiki Master, as well as yoga and meditation. She believes healing is the foundation to much of the growth we do both personally and in our career or business, shedding light on our purpose through the wisdom of each wound healed. In every session, healing and creation, she puts her heart and soul to the work, invoking the power of the divine to bring strength, clarity, and direction to those she works with. Shanel, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
This is going to be a very illuminating conversation. Shanel, I would love for you to share a personal story about how you got involved in your practice and perhaps how you healed something in your own life.
For sure. So I wanted to actually share a story that was the realization for me about the power of mindset. I find that mindset is a really key component to any healing or spiritual practice. And it goes with so many different modalities. So I have 3 kiddos, and after having my second child, about 6 weeks postpartum, I got really sick. I ended up in the ICU in the hospital. I had a chest infection, pneumonia. I had a strep infection in my bloodstream. I had a clot in my ovarian artery, and I went septic. So I literally was on death's door, and I was hallucinating. I was passing out and waking up hours later. I don't remember a lot. But what I do remember is the ICU nurse looked at me at one point when all my family was out of the room and said, "Look, if you want to get better, you have to decide to get better. What can I do to help you?" And I said, "I have the worst taste in my mouth right now, and it won't go away." She's like, "That's the IV antibiotics. Do you want some gum?" And she took the package of gum out of her purse and she handed it to me. And in that moment, I decided I wanted to live. In that moment, I decided that I had to do something. And it's the only thing I was going to do was decide I was going to live. That was going to be enough to move me in the right direction. And from that moment on, I started to get better. And that was a huge eye-opener for me about the power of our mindset and what it can do for us. And I love it and use it in so many different ways in different healing practices and modalities that I work with because it's so simple. We don't need a lot to be able to use it, but it is such a powerful tool in our spiritual practice, incredibly powerful. And that day proved it to me, and I've been using it ever since. And I use it with my clients. Moving to the root of their problem, that is really my gift. I have a talent for getting to the root of someone's problem and the block or healing that needs to be done and understanding where it started to be able to pivot. And a lot of it often is a mindset thing to begin with. Then we can use energy work and mediumship and past life regression and all sorts of other tools to be able to work with to move things. But mindset, time and again, is such a powerful part of any practice.
I totally get that. And that's what's happened in my own life. And one of the things that you made me think about is that we can shift our mindset through any number of modalities.
Yes.
Would you expand a little bit more on that? Because one of the things that I want this show to be for people is a place for them to come and learn about different practices, different modalities, and use that for healing and happiness, and understand that when it's all said and done, it doesn't matter which modality or practice you choose. It's the one that works for you.
Absolutely. I could agree with that so wholeheartedly. It really is about what works for you as a person. And when I do a session with someone, I say right off the hop, I'm a medical intuitive, I'm a psychic medium, I do business intuition, I do past life regression, I do energy work. And I'm going to take whatever I'm guided to use to be able to help you today, whatever spirit guides us to. And that's the beautiful part. Mindset in general, and it's such a simple like shift, but often the problems is we don't recognize where we need to shift. And this is where different modalities can help with that. For me, it's always interesting because it'll come up in different ways and different people need different things. I did a past life regression yesterday and that person just had a block and that's the choice. That was what called to them to work with. And it was really interesting because they quickly, very quickly went through 3 lives. And normally we do one. She quickly went through 3 lives, and each life was really specific and fast about being like, this is the feeling, this is the thing you have to be aware of. And then her spirit guide came in at the end and like told her some tools to use. And it was like the most beautiful thing. And again, it was a mindset shift she had to make. And her spirit guide just solidified that in the conversation. Often in other readings, just a general reading that I'll do, it's a psychic medium factor. And I go in and spirit shows me exactly the point in the life that something started to go wrong. So when we see that point and we can understand that point, then we can go, okay, what are the belief systems that we have around this? And how do we shift that? And I love using meditation. I do meditation with energy work, and that is one of the most powerful tools I think I use with people because it's really easy for people to do. The pathway regression is also a meditation style. It's not hypnosis, but it's just different doing like an actual meditation. So I kind of take people to like a happy place and then we'll move them through. And it's literally whatever spirit is showing me that they need to experience. And in that, we're also doing healing. And what the client is seeing and sharing with me is telling me where they are. No, oh, I turned and I'm not in the reeds and the water's really calm. Oh, okay, you're not stuck. You're aware that you subconsciously know that you're not stuck where you are. So that's not the problem. Where do we go from there? I love being able to empower my clients and my students because I teach spirituality practices as well. Again and again, one of the things I always say is, how do you receive? What feels good to you? What works for you? If you don't like doing this, well, here's 3 other things. Which one calls to you? What do you want to try? I think that's a big part of it is that not every modality is for every person.
No, you're absolutely right. And I also believe that not every modality is right for a person at a certain time. So maybe right now
Absolutely.
isn't the time to use it, but further down the road is. Talk about that a little bit because I think people hear about these modalities and it might sound weird to them. For an example, when I lost my son, a few months later, one of his friends went to see a tarot card reader just on a whim
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
her own life. And he began to talk about Levi in this session, enough
Yes.
so that I wanted to have a session. I didn't know anything about tarot. Now I understand that it's just a tool. The
Absolutely.
modality can be just a tool to get into a space. And so try to take some of the mysteriousness out of these tools that we can use.
Yes. That is like one of my big things I talk about all the time is like spirituality should be simple. And I'm really big on like the real talk about it. And there's so many amazing tools out there. And I think they begin to morph and change. I've been intuitive all my life. As a small child, I saw things, felt things, turned it off for a long time because it was really scary as a kid. I remember my mom saying, "There's no man in your doorway." And me going, "Yes, there was." He was there, right? And that was the day that I said, enough is enough. When I turned it back on, I started to have to find tools and ways to use things that were comfortable for me that weren't scary. And I still tease my clients about I don't do blood, guts, and gore because I'd have to sleep with the lights on for a month and my husband won't pay that hydro bill. But there's so many beautiful tools. I really love Oracle and tarot cards. Oracle is just so easy to use. It's so simple. I've taught my kids at a young age how to use oracle cards or even crystals. But you're right about that piece of like something might not resonate. And I've had clients that have come to me for sessions, like readings. And then after we've known for each other for a while, they're like, okay, what's this energy work? And how do you do this? And they suddenly ease into the next thing. And there is this comfort level of what is calling to us and what isn't calling to us. And sometimes it's simply a moment. I had an Akashic record reading the other day, and I very rarely ever book a reading with anybody else. I exchange with some of my intuitive friends, but they rarely book a reading. And it just called to my soul when I saw the listing. I can access the Akashic records if I really want to. It's not a skill that I'm strong at, but I can do it. But that day, and that reading was everything I needed to know that day. Like it was everything my soul was craving. So it is important for people to really educate themselves. The other thing I say about that too is not every practitioner is the same, and you should choose a practitioner that resonates with you. In being a psychic medium, I see all the time people saying, oh, who's been to a psychic that they like? And it's like, great, but why are you looking for a psychic? What is the thing that you're looking for? And it varies on each person. I say always, my gig is healing. So if you're coming to see me, you're somebody that is ready to do healing work and you're ready to do the deep work. Otherwise, you won't show up on my doorstep or my Zoom screen because you're not prepared to do the work. People that are just doing it for pure entertainment, again, they're not the people that show up for me because that's not what I do. I take people on a healing journey, and that isn't for everybody. So being connected to someone, being drawn to someone, like I said, that Akashic record reading, I was so drawn. And it was funny because I had a name and that's it. And I was just so drawn to it that I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. And we don't always share that, I think, in this realm about the importance of that, because the number one thing we have to have for healing is safety. And if we don't feel comfortable or safe with someone that we're working with, then we're not going to get anything from it. So that part of it is really important to actually do a little research or even just bring up their website, look at their picture and see if there's somebody that you're drawn to or connected to that you want to have a session with.
I'm total agreement. I have had a number of medium readings, psychic medium readings, since my son passed over, and some really deep connection. But I also had bad readings. And if you're somebody who's in the depths of pain, a bad
Yes.
reading can sometimes do more harm than good. And so, what I'd like to say right now for listeners is if that's happened to you, that's not the end all be all. There's still
Yes.
other practitioners out there who can help you in this. And the other thing that you brought up for me, and this is really where I'm coming from and what happened to me through my journey. And that is the importance of a spiritual connection when we're talking about healing, because we literally are spirits.
Yes, absolutely. There needs to be that connection to be able to work with someone. Even having people come in and being skeptical or unsure, their energy gets blocked. And I've had clients where I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling the block and I'm feeling the stress. Can we just breathe together for a moment and like allow things to open? Or clients where you're like, in the last 15 minutes, you get to the good stuff because they're finally open to having that connection. And you're like, why couldn't we have done this 45 minutes ago? We could have had this incredible reading. But there's that one piece of like skepticism, and there's a lot of people that are afraid of the work that I do and the work of the spiritual realm, and that's okay. It means that they just don't understand and they have to have experiences. But there has to be that spiritual connection. I often work with clients for a long period of time, not necessarily like close together, but I have clients that come back to me over and over again, some every few months, some once a year, because they're just working on things that they're clearing and moving through. So if we don't have a connection, then it makes it hard for us to do the work we have to do. I had a friend tease and she said, "Are all your clients your friends?" And I said, "Well, kind of." Because that's the feeling I want to have when I sit down with someone. I want someone to feel comfortable, like I'm just a friend that they can talk to and feel comfortable with, that I'm not some crazy spiritual person that you have to like be in awe of. That's not what I'm asking for. And anybody who is, are you working with someone that is in the right spiritual realm for you? That is creating an energy and a mindset that you want to work with.
Totally agree. You mentioned earlier that spirituality is and can be very simple. I think a lot of times people think that you've got to meditate for 14 hours a day and there's all these processes that you have to do and I think that they just make it more complex than it really is. Having a spiritual connection and I'd like you to expand on this, not just a connection with the people you work with, but helping them find their own spiritual connection to their higher self, to spirit, to the universe, to a higher power. That has been a path that has helped me go from literally wanting to die every day because of
Yeah.
grief to understanding exactly where he is and knowing the joy that he's in. That spiritual connection, I think, is the first thing that I like to talk to people about is helping them find a modality to connect to spirit.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Having tools is one of the easiest ways to create that connection for people. Like I said, I love oracle cards because they're really simple to use and it helps people to build trust. Asking a question, kind of seeing what they've received, and then pulling those cards for validation. Journaling, kind of automatic writing is another one that's really beautiful. But as we've talked about throughout, finding that thing that resonates for you. I was a single mom of 3 kids under the age of 10. My spiritual practices had to be simple because I didn't have a lot of time and space for it. So sometimes I did mantra chanting while I cooked dinner. Sometimes my meditation was eyes open, watching kids play in the backyard, but sitting in quiet and finding that connection to the earth beneath me and everything that I was feeling around me. Again, I think there's this piece where people don't know. They're like, "Where do I start? Where do I begin?" Or, "I'm scared. What if I hear something I don't wanna hear or see something that I don't wanna see or see something that's scary?" And I'm being able to educate ourselves. And podcasts like yours and mine are like a beautiful way for people to get a glimpse into, "Oh, well, that doesn't sound scary. I can try that." Or, "Well, they sound lovely. What do they do?" And looking into the modalities that we're using to kind of get a glimpse in. But there's this piece where unless we're open to discovery, we get stuck in that, well, I have this misconception of this is the way that it's supposed to be, that everybody's meant to see, or everybody's supposed to hear, or that voice is this external voice of God or spirit. When I say to people all the time, in mediumship, the voice you hear in your head sounds like your own voice. And people are like, "What? Really?" And I'm like, "Yes." And it sounds like somebody else's words, but it sounds like your voice and it's just their word. And they're like, "Really?" And it's like, okay, well, I just empowered you to understand that this is something that works for you. And I always hope that in my sessions that I've given people tools that they can use. Guided meditation is beautiful. Yoga Nidra, which is a form of guided meditation that really goes into that subconscious mind, deep relaxation. Like I said, I love oracle cards. Even simple things like being drawn to a crystal. Oh, I'm drawn to this. Well, look it up and see what it means. And then you'll probably go, oh, that's why I'm drawn to that. That's what I needed right now. And it happens so many times. Parents, I love working with parents who have spiritual kids. Growing up, my mom didn't know how to nurture that. I come from a psychic family, but nobody really used the gift to the extent that I use it, minus my triple great grandmother who spoke no English. She only spoke French. So nobody else really knew how to move through that. So I often get parents, my kid's afraid of the dark, they see spirits. I'm like, take them to the crystal store and see what they pick. Send me a picture when you're done. And I'll be like, oh, that's perfect. They picked this for this and this for this and this for this because they just intuitively know. We are so conditioned to need instructions or to be told what to do, when the reality about spirituality is it's about finding flow and it's about not forcing. It's about being present, which we just don't live in a society where that is the norm necessarily. Busyness, so the hustle is praised. We're on electronics all the time. There's all these things that unplug us from the stuff that we want to actually plug into.
Oh, I totally agree with that. 100%. I read that part of your work is shedding light on our purpose through the wisdom of each wound healed.
Mm,
And that kind of sums up a bit of my journey. I would
yes,
love for you to maybe expand on that. And especially about purpose, because I think a lot of times that when we're hurting, when we have things that need healed, it closes us off from really what we should be doing. What is our purpose for being here? And vice versa is true that once we really understand why we're here, some of those wounds can fade away.
absolutely. I love that you brought this up because I just was having a conversation with someone the other day about purpose. And we often, again, have this misconception or this ideal that purpose is big. It's so big. Like it has to be this like aha moment or like this like grand thing that you're going to do. And sometimes our purpose is just being a great mom or being a friend to those in need, or just taking care of our corner of the earth and nurturing the earth and the ground. And it doesn't have to be this massive thing that we get this preconceived notion that life purpose should be. So when we release that, all of a sudden we've taken this burden off of ourselves, which is, I think, a big part of stepping into our purpose. But often our wounds will open things up and help us to understand why we're meant to be here or the path that we are meant to be traveling. Even in your situation with grief, it really opened you to another layer of healing and your purpose, and it's taken you in a whole different direction. When we discover those pieces of ourselves that were hidden or discover our own spirituality, so many people just understanding their own connection, their spiritual connection, their connection to their soul and their self, suddenly can go, okay, I feel different and I show up different. And again, the purpose doesn't have to be grand. It can often be something really simple as holding somebody else's hand through grief or being able to share our story, which I think is one of the most powerful tools that we have, telling people they're not alone. I have this wound, you have this wound, and we're both going to get through it. Look what I've done. Here's some of the tools I used. What works for you to get to that place? And often when we take that grand piece off to people just kind of sigh into being themselves and having permission to just be instead of this constant searching that they're doing. We're often looking outside of ourselves for validation or for the purpose or for the next step. But the reality is when we get quiet and go within, and we don't necessarily need to be quiet about it, but when we go within, when we have that spiritual connection, all the answers are shown to us. And the beautiful part is they show up in like the most random places and through the most random experiences. We get validation through somebody having a conversation with us and saying the thing that we wanted to hear, or listening to a podcast and somebody saying exactly what you got, or just that sign similar message from our spirited loved one on the other side, our spirit guide. That was just that validation that we're like, oh yeah, I'm totally on the right track. I saw the hummingbird. I know that's my grandma. I know that's her just saying, you're okay. It's going to be fine. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
This brings up identity. We do get really wrapped up in identity. And I'm actually reading some things that you wrote, and where you're talking about we often get lost in who we are seen as instead of who
Yes.
we authentically are. And it's in that we can forget or willingly sacrifice who
Oh,
we
yeah.
are and to function in this reality we created. And I think women know this especially well.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because we do. And we might not even be completely aware
Oh,
how much
I
of our
agree.
power we're sacrificing and giving up.
Yeah. Again, that's that piece of feeling lost. And there's so many women. I do work with a lot of women. There's men in there too, but a lot of women. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from. And I was in that boat once upon a time. I was a single mom. I was the everything. And I was known as Maitland's mom and Grayson's mom and Isabel's mom. And you were just like, okay, I have a name. Can we use it? Because in the schoolyard, that's how you get called. That's the teachers. But we get really lost in that. And we then start to bend and shrink and get smaller and smaller to fit into the spaces that we are given to be in or wanting to be in. And you're right. We subconsciously don't even realize how much we've contorted ourselves sometimes. And again, this is this piece of purpose. We can't find our purpose when we're not being authentically who we are. When we are lost in the identity of wife or husband or employee or even boss or business owner, we get caught up in that and we forget to be present in who we are instead. Or we're just so desperate to move through. We're in survival mode. So many people in survival mode that we just go, okay, how do I get to the next step? How do I just survive today and be able to fall into my bed dead asleep because I can't even function anymore? I've survived all day long, kind of thing. So there is that piece that when we lose that identity, we start to lose pieces of ourselves. And I love taking people back to like, who are you? Who are you? And how do you want to show up? And can you please be full size? And I definitely, again, I think one of my biggest powers is that I don't ask my clients to do anything that I haven't done myself or am totally willing to do. And I will stand next to you and do it with you. I had to learn how to take the cloak off. I had to learn how to stop being small so that I was safe in the world that I was in. When you come out as a psychic medium, people are like, excuse me, what? Now that's changed, which is so beautiful. Now I go to networking events and somebody will point at me and somebody will come rushing over and she's like, oh my God, are you a psychic medium? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, what do you do? Right. And I love that people are so excited and they want to talk about it now. But there was definitely a time where you kind of go, do I tell that person? Is it safe? Is that okay for me to say? And so even for myself, I didn't share those identities. Or I was a dance teacher for years. I taught people's children. I didn't want people uncomfortable with the work that I do. So nobody really knew at the dance studio that these are the things that I do. The odd mom who was closer to me because our kids dance together or whatever maybe knew. And they'd be like, "Ooh, what?" But it was like this thing where I was like, no, I got to keep those two worlds apart because I don't want to upset anybody. But then I shrank. I shrank to fit into that world. And when I stopped shrinking, life got bigger. Life got easier. I stopped having to remember where I fit and where I don't, and who I say things to and who I don't. And now I just hook freely. And it's so freeing. It's so like, there's just like this weight that gets lifted off of you, and you just kind of walk on a cloud because you're standing up full size and being exactly who you are.
I think that once you really connect spiritually, you can start bringing all your worlds together in such a
Yes.
totally authentic way. And it's really a beautiful thing. I think that you have an exercise for us today that we can
Yeah,
do. And I'd love to go into that portion right now.
for sure. I wanted to do a little meditation with energy work today because I think that is a really powerful tool that I love working with. Recording healing meditations, tapping into the energy of what's going on. It's just a really simple way for people to connect. It's guided, so we're not being left to our own devices, our own thoughts in our mind. We're just following along. And I love energy work because there's no time and space for energy. It can move anywhere it needs to move and in any direction of time and space. So, regardless of when somebody is listening to this or where they're listening to this, they're still getting that energy work by just listening to our voices. And I think that's a really powerful thing about energy work that is so incredible to be able to share with people. And I always like to say a caveat, if you don't like the feeling of the energy work coming through, you can ask that part to stop and just enjoy the meditation on its own. We have free will, and all it takes is intention to say no thank you or yes please, and allow that flow of energy to flow. So, we'll let everybody just adjust in their seats for a moment, maybe close their eyes if it's comfortable for them. And just get to a place where we can connect to the natural rhythm of our breath and allowing our body to relax a little deeper, starting to feel that rise and fall of the chest and belly. With every inhale and exhale, feeling ourselves come further into the room, more present in our body. And as thoughts drift in, just allow them to be acknowledged and allow them to just drift right back out again, clearing the mind and relaxing the body, breath by breath, relaxing deeper and deeper. You can see yourself standing at a garden gate, the most idyllic white picket fence, where you reach for the latch and open the gate to step inside. As you walk along the cobblestones, you are drawn to the beautiful flowers surrounding you on either side. So many shapes and colors. And you begin to notice even more detail. The bees are buzzing, the birds flying and chirping about, the skittering of a chipmunk or a squirrel as it skitters by and up a tree. The beauty of this garden is absolutely mesmerizing. There is something comforting about this place, something very familiar. As you continue down the path, it winds around a corner, and you find yourself at the most beautiful, ornate fountain. You can hear the water trickling, and there's almost this sense of coolness standing near it. You run your fingers through the water, and it feels so refreshing and cool. And as you gaze up, you notice the most beautiful angel statue at the top. somehow you didn't catch it when you first stepped up to it. But now, as you gaze up, you wonder how you missed it. It's almost as if this angel is staring back at you, like it's calling to you in some way. You take a moment to close your eyes and just feel and connect a little deeper. There becomes a knowing, an understanding, an answer that you were looking for that was right inside of you. You give thanks to this magical space and for the messages that it brought you today. You take one more glance to allow yourself to remember this place, this fountain, this angel, and these beautiful flowers surrounding it all. A reminder of the beauty that resides outside of us, but also within it. You begin to meander back down the path again, feeling so at peace, relaxed, almost as if you walk a little taller, feeling empowered. As you get to the gate, you open it once again, allowing that gate to close behind you. You just take a big, deep breath and slowly release it, knowing that everything is going to be okay. Slowly, as you're ready, you can begin to butterfly your eyes back open again and come back to this space. Perfect.
Beautiful, Shanel.
Thank you.
And I hope that people will take that and just use it to slow down a moment and connect.
Yes. Yes.
I know
Maybe
that our listeners would love to know how to find you. Could you let us know the best place to find you? And I will also put it down in the show notes.
absolutely. Two blessed places to find me are my website, which is fromtheheartandsoul.com. I also show up on social media quite a bit. I would say Instagram is my favorite place to be. You can find me at From the Heart and Soul on Instagram as well. I share daily channeled messages, weekly kind of channeled energy forecast, and lots of beautiful information and messages in between.
Wonderful. I hope that in the future you'll be able to come back and share some more with us. There was so much more I wanted to talk to you about today.
I would love to come back anytime. Maybe we'll narrow a topic down to talk about. I love to be able to share, and I am so grateful to have been able to be here with you today. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. You've been listening to the Spirit Experience podcast, where we discuss spiritual practices for healing and happiness. To join one of our free Spirit Experience classes, see the link in the show notes. Have a joyful week, and I'll see you next Monday.